Pro tips! Hey everyone, my name is Kenneth. I'm the head roaster here at Compound Coffee, and today we're going to talk about something that is often overlooked in the roasting process that can make or break your roast. Can you guess what it is? That's right, it's not actually the roasting, but the cooling part at the end of a roast. Now, if you've had the luxury to compare a roast that has been cooled down in under 3 minutes to room temperature versus a roast that took 5 or 6 minutes to cool down to room temperature, you'll immediately notice the difference in taste between the two batches of coffee. The coffee that was cooled down quickly will generally taste much cleaner and more flavorful as opposed to the roast that took 5 or 6 minutes to cool down, and it generally becomes a bit more muddled. It's not as flavorful and clean. So try noticing how long your beans takes to cool down the next time you roast a batch of coffee. It's also important to make sure that the cooling process is the same from batch to batch, otherwise it can also cause differences in your roast. But more importantly, you want to make sure your roast always cools down to room temperature in less than 4 minutes. Anything above that will start to reduce the quality of your coffee. Now, there are two conditions that we can control when it comes to the cooling of the coffee. The first one is your batch size. Obviously, with a bigger batch size, there is more mass of coffee and there's more heat energy, so it will take a longer time to cool down. So if you like to load 100% of your roaster's capacity, that can have a lot of detrimental effects, not just from the burner not having a sufficient heat capacity, but also from a longer cooling time after you drop the batch from your roaster. So make sure you take note of how long your coffee is taking to cool down. If it's taking too long, one of the things that you can do is to reduce the batch size. The second condition is the ambient conditions that you're roasting in. Now, we don't really have full control over the ambient conditions, but if you're roasting in a hot and humid weather, just like I am, you might need to reduce your batch size even further or have a more efficient cooling system. Maybe you can turn on the aircon or have multiple fans directed at the cooling tray. If you're in a country with multiple seasons, summer and winter will have a very different effect on your cooling process, and that might result in a different result for your roast, even if you followed all the other parameters and your roast curves perfectly prior to that. So the next time you roast, don't forget to take note how long your coffee takes to cool down after it's been dropped from the roaster. That's it for this week's pro tips. I hope you enjoyed, and please click subscribe below. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook so that you get notified every time we release more pro tips like this. See you next week.